first. Nobody feel pressure to disclose your AI therapy sessions up here. That is doctor-patient privilege. I won't talk about that either, but I am a business owner. I'm starting a new venture with my partner, and as we're looking for seed funding, it was suggested that we use AI to see where there were pitch competitions for funding in our areas. I'm in DC, she's in New York. It seems so obvious, but it wasn't something I thought of until a venture capitalist told me about. So excellent use of AI. Alasia?
Yes, so the most recent, I would say, I'm using AI right now to identify the least expensive trips as I fly into other countries because I don't have time to research that. So I use AI to help me with that.
Yes.
So I use AI because I like books, but there are no more of these how-to manuals. I actually have to go to AI to look up things like, what is the cost of a good of service? Or how do I understand valuation? Because I'm not an accountant, I'm more of a social scientist. So AI has been very helpful, particularly since my husband owns a contracting business, to support the books, okay? Support the books and make sure the money comes in the household, right? So I like AI for that reason because it really helps me with things I may not be familiar with.
I think for us, it's a little bit more intentional in that right now in America, there are people that are saying, I want to support Black-owned businesses. I want to support Black-owned businesses, but I don't know how. I don't know where. I don't know who they are. And so we've created a platform that will allow you to find Black-owned businesses that you're looking for locally across your state and across the country. And it's called, write this down, byblack.us. They're byblack.us to be able to find where you can spend your hard-earned dollars with other Black-owned businesses. That is the tool that I use pretty much daily to make sure that our dollars stay in our communities.
Love that, Ron Sr. Ron Jr.?
Maybe a little less woke, but for me, I think I want to demystify the idea that AI is something new. We're using it algorithmically for the recommendations you're getting for the music when I'm listening to Spotify or anything else, right? Tidal. I'm using it on maps when I'm trying to figure out when I'm trying to get home or trying to get somewhere. We're using it in a lot more mundane ways, but they are fundamental to my daily life, and I'm imagining you're doing it as well. So you're much closer to it than you think, and I think that's really important to remember.
So we're going to dive into the serious stuff now, and I want to start with you and keep the theme on AI, which has become obviously much more widely available than it used to be, and people are using it in a wide variety of ways, including job seeking. So how do you see sort of technology changing the way that people look for opportunities, and why particularly should our communities really be paying attention to this?
Absolutely. So AI is really being used for everything from the hiring process to the screening process. And it's important to adapt very quickly and to learn how to use AI to understand that the algorithms that are being written are biased in some of the ways that they are written. My expertise is that of diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility, and I understand that our communities are not as up in the language. So data is now a currency. Understanding and learning data is now a currency, and so it's important to learn as much as you can on how to utilize AI and what the algorithms, how they will kick out your name, or if it's not specifications to the job description, your resume will never get screened in. And so it's very important to understand that the companies that you're vying for is using AI. And so you have to be on the other end of that to ensure that you understand the process of doing AI, because rhythm is biased because there's not like a diversity in these positions writing the software program. So you have to be aware of that.
Nicole, sort of on that theme of, bias, why would you say now is really the time for all of us to be having this conversation, especially since technology hasn't necessarily been super friendly to the Black and Brown community?
Well, I love that question for a variety of reasons. A book in the author's lounge? I do. Because guess what? We as Black people are digitally invisible. We are, actually, let me do it this way if you don't mind, Tatiana.
Go.
How many people in this area right now own a patent, a copyright, a trademark on any product that's related to technology? Raise your hand. Okay, so my mama used to tell me, if you're not in the kitchen, you're on the menu. So all of us are on the menu and we are invisible to the technology, but guess what? The train has left the station. So we've got biased algorithms that misrepresent and miscategorize Black women. We have data that puts our resumes at the bottom of the pile because we may have gone to an HBCU. We may have other triggers like pre-screening where they say, send us a video so we can see if you're right for this position. And they're looking at our eye contact, how much we're smiling. My point is, the train has left the station, but guess what, folks? We got to get a ticket because that's how business is run today. And what I suggest, Tatiana, in this space to my sister right here is we have choice over what products we decide to use. We know, and I work in policy as a researcher, I'm a sociologist, we know what products are the ones that take us down a very, very hard rabbit hole. We know the ones that do not support our ability to buy Black. We know the ones that actually put us in a box, and we have to actually share that information, much like we share what kind of car is best to have, what refrigerator you should buy, and where you should go out to eat. We need to have language, folks, on this because obviously it is changing the nature of how we live, we learn, and we earn. So don't get me started. I'm like a Baptist preacher.
I mean, we're going to have to cut her off, I see. And we're going to move on to Ron Busby. Oh, Junior, do you want to add something? Please.
I would also say I think it's really important to also speak about the dangers that are also existing in the job search, particularly when it comes to fraud. There are so many fake job opportunities where they will ask you for your information. They'll ask you for your social security. They'll hire you, say it's a remote job where you don't have to do anything except for these sorts of things. And they're using that to inbound fish and get information about you. And so it is really important to be digitally savvy and literate enough to know that even in the job hunt, that not every job, not every opportunity is right for you. There are a lot of companies as well that keep open job opportunities for years just for the opportunity to actually be able to hone their own algorithms around basing their own employees off of what's out there in the market. So they can then say, oh, I could get somebody who's 10% or 15% better or more qualified out there who's willing to take this job at this salary. So we are really in a place where we're being pegged against each other. And then that information is also being used and weaponized against us. And so it's really important to understand as well.
So you talked about being digitally savvy. You talked about being digitally literate. All of that relates to digital adoption. And Ron Sr., I want to ask you specifically about that. How would you say the Black Chambers is really working with your partners to help these entrepreneurs access the technology, access the tools that they need to grow?
You know, if you look at the number of Black-owned businesses, yes, we have 300,000+ Black-owned businesses in the U.S. Black Chamber. 90% of them are sole proprietors, not mom or pops. What they need is more technology to give them at least a fair chance to be seen, to be able to compete, and to be able to have the best chance at getting awarded a contract. AI is there, but the U.S. Black Chamber is making sure that we're getting AI that fits our needs. I work out every morning, and it's not because I'm trying to get buff. It's just so that
it is.
It's just so that as I continue to get old, those muscles are still active and activated. If we continue just to use AI to do the work on our behalf, then we use the skills that our customers are looking for us to do. Most of us are selling to other small businesses or Black consumers. The reason why they are shopping with us is because of relationships. It's not because we have the slickest technology. It's not because we have the best looking website. It's because that they understand who you are, what your mission is, and more importantly, who you're supporting by them supporting you. So don't get caught up in, I've got to make sure that I implement the latest technology. Make sure that you're being the best business owner you can be. And if AI allows you to be a better business owner, then by all means, implement it. But never, ever, ever stop learning and stop implementing the muscle use that you need to have the long-term stability. Let me say this. I worked at IBM when I first came out of college. They taught us how to code. We coded in BASIC, in Fortran, and in COBOL. If I tried to go get a job today and said, yes, I know how to code, I know COBOL, they would laugh me up out of the building. We've got to make sure that we are not losing what has allowed us to be successful, and that is the mindset of being an entrepreneur. And that is making sure that our relationships continue, and that ain't gonna necessarily only be AI.
Ron and Ron, is there an example you can think of where you've worked with a business that has adopted this new technology of AI and you've seen it work particularly well?
I think that Salesforce augmentation can be really helpful. So you're thinking about top of funnel. Hey, I'm trying to, all the people that are emailing me, the inbound opportunities I have, how do I make sure that they get the right conversation, the right information, so that I can actually get to a conversation with them? We want to go from high tech to high touch. And so it is not enough to just say, hey, I want to put as much technology into the supply chain, into the funnel as possible. It's really about asking, how do I amplify the work that I already do really well? The reality is that AI is not going to cut the hair for you. It's not going to, fix the plumbing for you. We have to realize that at the end of the day, we're looking for places to plug in technology that do us a favor in that work. What I will say is we really want to be cautious of taking on hype. If you were here 3 or 4 years ago, people would have told you, hey, why aren't you accepting cryptocurrency? Why aren't you thinking about distributed ledgers, Web3? Today, you'd be saying that's not necessarily as important as this conversation. And so being really cautious of how can you be digitally native? How can your brand exist in a virtual space where people can find you? How is your web presence meaningful? How do you connect to people in a story that matters? That sort of stuff is important. The last thing I'll say is there's a great study that came out from MIT. 95% of the big corporations that have done all of this AI augmentation to add AI into their business, 95% of them have said, we have seen no measurable impact in business outcomes. So I would hate for you to go out there and spend the time to hire the people, to spend the money to get the software. And we can already tell for a lot of companies, it really is about shareholder value. It's about being able to reduce headcount. It's about being able to prove out that they're using high-end technology for all other reasons that have nothing to do with the business fundamentals. And so I want to really caution people away from that and focus on that as the fundamentals. What do you do well, and how do you do that better?
If I can add on to that, I think we're really framing, again, that we have agency on how we actually use these tools. Now, I do want to, in a friendly way, you see Ron Jr. is the youngest person on this panel. I think I'm the second youngest, but I might be lying, right?
I'm 29 every year.
Right, exactly. But I do want to bring up, I think, some areas which we should also think about where it can be helpful. There are a lot of businesses that don't have an accounting operation. And that is one area as a business owner, you either get it right or you get it wrong, right? And there is some AI, and I'm that way, where I don't want to click the AI mode on some of these financial accounting softwares. But when I do, it actually helps me do my job a little better without having to go to Barnes & Nobles and pick up the book. So I think, again, it's really about measuring what type of AI you need. My girlfriend, and I'm going to speak to all the Black women that are sitting here right now, she was recently laid off. And so she's been using AI to think about, does my cover letter cover the skills that are in this? There are generative AI tools, Claude, Llama, OpenAI, etc. I critique those tools every day, but I know when you are at need, you're either going to rely on paper that is no longer existent, or you're going to find ways to leverage the AI for you, which is our message, right? Use it the way it fits for you. And so, does that cover letter sound like I'm being too aggressive? Am I sending that email at work and I might actually scare my boss, right? Running those tools actually can help you with that tone. It can help you in prospecting. It can help you in lead generation. But I also want to put out something that you said earlier in terms of adoption. This panel is sponsored by Comcast. And if you do not have access to technology, they have 1,200 plus lift zones across the country, partnering with trusted institutions where you can get access to the internet. There is no reason today that many of us are not connected outside of the fact that there's a particular government at hand that keeps taking it away. It is up to us to find those resources and not allow that to be a barrier to you, because we've come very far in this space. I kid people, I have been in this space for 30 years, so I'm much older than 29. I actually say I'm 32. But I share that to say we have a lot more work in making sure people adopt technology, but get that barrier out of the way, particularly for those of you who have family in the South and rural areas. You know how it is. You go to visit and you can't get a signal and you go into the hotel or you're trying to figure out how to go to your car. Listen, we have a lot of work to do on that space, but we have resources through Comcast and other companies in particular. Comcast doing the best job of closing the digital divide.
I'm glad you actually jumped in on that because I wanted to ask you about the tools, about the resources that students, employers, people who are searching for jobs can use. And also the issue of access is front and center, because if we know about these tools, we know about these resources, we have to have a connection in order to use them. So I want to turn to you, though, and I want to ask you a little bit about skills. What do you think are the most important skills and strategies that people need to have to be successful in what is such a fast-paced, changing technological environment?
Absolutely. On your point of access, I just want to make it clear that access does not mean equity. It is our responsibility to learn as much as possible about AI. And I'm not going to age myself. I'm 20, you 32, you 29, I'm 30. But I don't like to learn new things. But I've realized that with AI, you have to have, number one, skill of adaptability. You have to be able to be flexible enough to adapt to the ever-changing world. So that means you may not need to go get another PhD or another bachelor's or master's degree or coaching. You need to go get a certificate in AI. And there's a lot of free certificates going on right now. Matter of fact, my husband is in California at an AI conference right now. But you have to be adaptable. You have to be willing to learn new skills. And those skills look like certificate programs. A lot of times people don't understand that it's not going to school for something else. You have to do a certificate. So it's specific to something. And so go do the research. Be teachable. Just because you are the teacher, now you need to be teachable. This is a foreign language. And so you have to prepare your mind to adapt, to be flexible enough. The other thing I want to say is also the skills that you need to understand is the job market is changing. My position as the Chief Diversity Officer under President Biden was the inaugural Chief Diversity Officer at the U.S. Department of Labor. And I'm telling you, AI is taking or will replace a lot of positions. And so if you want a chance to be in the labor market, you have to have skills in AI. It used to be cybersecurity. Now it's moving to AI. And so I think you just have to indulge yourself into the language, understanding the narrative, and again, understanding ways to use it. There are so many ways. You talked about a few ways of using it in your everyday work. It doesn't have to be people who are business owners. But for me, you say make sure your cover letter is not so rough. Sometimes I tell my agent, listen, make it sound like my tone. Direct in your face, girl next door, because you want to make sure that you are also messaging yourself and getting yourself across. So it really would mean indulging in the information and learning as much as you can, so that adaptability will be very important.
Well, as AI expands, you touched on it a little bit earlier, Ron Jr., there's this whole issue about, personalization. So how do you strike the balance between, the technical and the personal? I mean, high tech, high touch. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think it's important to understand that there are so many different forms of AI, right? There's algorithmic work, there is agentic work, there is generative AI. So what is really flattening about this term is that we use it interchangeably for everything else. And that, I think, is really dangerous. And so when you're talking about what it is you want to know or learn or use, I think that's really valuable and important to understand that it is a scalpel, not a hammer, right? If you go into everything thinking you can use it, then you've actively really neutered your own ability to really actually know what the tools are that you're using. To your point around what it means to have something that feels personalized, I think where we are moving is a world where, in many ways, because knowledge is available, right? Knowing things, you can look that up so easily. The question is creativity. How do you actually apply that? And in a lot of ways, as Senior was saying, creativity is a muscle. If you do not use it, it atrophies. And so what you really should be looking at is how do I connect these different tools in meaningful ways? And beyond that, to the point of how do I really use these tools in means that personalize the results and whatnot. I think that's important to use it. It's also really important to understand, hey, I am also the product. If it is free, I am being mined for information. It is looking for ways to monetize me, to sell me ads, to sell me products. And so you should be really considerate of that. So what that means, you're looking at systems, maybe like Llama, that you can actually download on your own computer and run directly on your own services versus maybe something like a Gemma or a Gemini or a Claude where it goes back up to a server and up to the cloud where it's actually then generating more information for other folks. You should be asking yourself for your own business, do I want to be giving away information to some of these services and tools that very well could generate that information somewhere else? And so what is IP, what matters, it's really important to understand that exchange.
I actually was going to follow up with that because, when you talk about creativity, this is our own intellectual property. As business owners, as entrepreneurs, we think about ideas, right? But since this is a sort of news you can use environment, what would any of you say to the safety issue of using AI? Because as soon as I sort of plug in my idea, it's fodder for everybody. So how do you talk to people about the security aspect of their own intellectual property?
I think open source tools where you actually own you at least own the experience is a really fundamental way if you're talking about that creative exercise, how you train your own algorithms, so you own the actual experience. There are tools for that. And they are not, you've got things that really demonstrate, whether you're talking about a DeepSeek where the Chinese government is able to create its own tool without having to do all the sophistication and have all the GPUs and all the processing power. You realize that this idea of AI that has to be super expensive and super water intensive or super aggressive in terms of huge data centers, that is also a myth. And so I really want to just caution against this idea that it has to look one specific way for your AI consumption.
Well, and I think I want to kind of go there. And what Ron Jr. said is we're actually bombarded by a lot of this conversation about the power of technology. And I want to continue to echo that much of it is correct, right? Because it's almost as if we went from the 8-track and the record to now all of our music in the cloud. So it's happening, right? But I think your question is so actually interesting because it reminds me of a couple things. My grandmother told me, if it don't make sense, it don't make sense. And what that means is when you feel like you're giving information to something and you're not sure how secure it is, there should be an intuitive reminder that you have to think about how your data may be collected or used. There are appliances right now that plug in your information to determine what you have in your refrigerator. AI is telling you what you need for your meal plan. But when your refrigerator asks you for your social security number, you need to exercise what my grandmother said, which is if it doesn't make sense, it doesn't make sense. And I want to sort of stress, since we're at CBC, the importance for our communities to be attuned to this. We've grown up in an internet where we actually give away our information. We give away our images. We give away our posts. We tell people what party we're showing up this week. We do all these things. And guess what? We do it at the cost of getting those services for free. So it's really important for us to understand that it is your data that fuels the AI economy. And we need both some type of guidance from government to give us privacy legislation. But most importantly, we have to have some, I think Ron put it best, we have to keep, or my sister here, or one of you, or everybody, we have to be learning people. We cannot close the door just because it's something we don't understand. How many of you, it took you until you were 21 to get your license? Okay, only one. My children still don't have their license, and they all past 21 because they don't feel that they have to drive because they have other things that can drive them, including their mom. But guess what that does in terms of limiting your ability to be mobile? It's the same thing with technology. You may not have to drive everywhere, but you have to have a license, understanding, guidance to know what that looks like. If I could do a quick plug.
Yeah, plug away. And then we're going to get to Ron Jr.
Yeah, no,
he's
I know,
itching to say something.
I want to put a quick plug. So the work that I do, in addition to making sure that Black people are visible in the technology space, again, I have a book in the author's lounge right over here by the stage. I also want to ensure that Black people are not harmed by AI. So I started an AI equity lab. No one is going to take the word equity away from any of us on this panel, for us to talk about what that means in banking, criminal justice, when we come to disparate impact on our businesses, education. Folks, if you have children and your kids are coming home with AI tools that their teacher told them to use, you should be asking the same questions that we're actually putting out there today. So what we're trying to do is to make sure that we're building non-discriminatory AI, AI that can be optimized, that have people that look like us building it, and experiences that reflect our lived realities. Not the trauma, but also the joy. Because oftentimes the conversation we have is the things that the AI reflects based on our historical trauma in this country, but we also need to bring the joy because we are so many things.
And we need to now bring the junior.
So I want to just say, speaking to the dangers, this is the Congressional Black Caucus, we're talking about solidarity in my own view. What is really important is to remember, when you're talking about these generative systems that are creating images or even that are using like all this stuff, much of it was actually made and powered by folks in Kenya who had to look at images of pornography, of violence, of murder, to be able to help tune these systems, right? As they were deciding whether or not this is a blender or this is a blended person, these systems were literally built on the backs of Black folks on the continent having to look at images to rate and point these systems, saying this is a 5-point, this is a 3-point, this is a 10-point. All of these systems are built on the backs of our own cultural and intellectual capital. And so when you talk about the dangers of these systems, when we say, look, we're the product, we have been the product through and through, literally from beginning to end. It is mining us, it's been using us, paying folks that are doing this work 2 cents a day, 2 cents an image, really both oppressive and predatory work. And we do not think about what it looks like for someone on the other side of the world who looks like us to ultimately be exploited by the same systems that we seem to say we're benefiting from. And so we have to hold them accountable. We talk with these corporations, I will not name any in specific, but we know that they are ultimately complicit in a deep violence towards folks who look exactly like us somewhere else in the world.
Did you want to?
Yes, very quickly. We used to talk about reverse psychology. And a reverse way that I use AI is because in the DEIA space, I realized that so many people have it wrong. Right? So the language is incorrect, it's surface level. And so I actually feed AI information because I want the narrative to be correct. And so I have a book and it's going to be there tomorrow, Diversity Illusion. And I really feed it information because of my experience and because of the years of service that I've had, because I know if you pull it from the internet, it's incorrect. It's surface level. It doesn't push the root of what it is. It doesn't explain what DEIA is and equity is and it isn't. So I've used it reversed. I've pumped information in because I'm like, if you're allowing other people to have access to my intellectual property anyway, let me make sure this narrative is correct. So that's another way you can use AI as well.
Well, I wanted to ask each of you, I mean, we have people in the audience who are trying to navigate all of this, and we've gotten some great takeaways, but would each of you just give one piece of advice to the audience that you do not want them to leave here and not remember? And I will just piggyback on you. My business partner and I also do that when we use AI. We educate it about what we're doing, because that's a way for other people to go in there and access what we want them to know about what is important to us and to our business. So that's the nugget I would share. Do we want to start at the end and work down, or?
Yeah, the word that I'm going to lean into is really, I just want folks to understand that these systems are rife with error. And so it is important to trust but verify, right? The amount of times where you will see something where it will just generate false information or create numbers that it can be prompted and primed to that, it is absolutely useful to use these tools. It is important not to lean on them exclusively. So once again, if creativity is a muscle, you must ultimately then do the work of exercising it. That is what I would say is use these systems, be very diligent, and be very cautious about what it means to just sort of forego your own responsibility in them.
As the senior on the panel, who probably has used AI the least of the panelists, but I will say that it has probably helped our generation more than any others. As a sole proprietor, you need to know your strengths But more importantly, you also need to understand what your weaknesses are. And once you do that, then you can utilize the technologies that are out here to be able to make you a better shopper, but more importantly, a better business owner. At the U.S. Black Chamber, we do 14 free webinars every month talking about the skills, the resources, as well as the solutions to the challenges that most of us face on a day-to-day basis. But you know what? Just like in this audience, I always say 50% of the people will take advantage of the resources that are presented to them for free. And yet we will give you information, we will give you emails, we will even give you phone numbers to contact us, and you will say, well, I showed up, and 50% of winning is showing up. You haven't won a thing. The real win is when you follow up. And so my point of leaving here today, for the seniors that are here, make sure that you're following up with the people that understand the technologies that are being created every day to make you a better business owner. And more importantly, as a Black consumer, right now, we've got to do better with our back dollars. And so I'm going to continue to go back to Buy Black to make sure that we don't leave this week saying, well, I got a lot about AI, but I still don't know how to move the economic agenda for Black Americans. BYBLACK.US. That is the solution. AI is going to help us, but your dollars are going to make sure that we have sustainability in our communities.
I can't follow that, senior. Listen, I think that this conversation gives me life, and I'll tell you why. The Black community has so many things that we have to deal with right now. We're being erased, and I love the fact that we're reverse engineering. We're trying to figure out how we use this technology, not just, to help us find jobs, but to get us to locations, to ensure that we're up to speed with our skills. We hear over and over again about how AI and robots are going to displace us. Although I did say the other day, nobody can displace us. We are unique and special people. What I would say to all of you are a couple of things just to take away. First and foremost, don't leave somebody in your community behind. You have a mother, a grandmother, an auntie, a cousin that is just as confused as we are sometimes with this technology. So a big takeaway for me is bring them with you. And as I said, with Comcast sponsoring, I just want to continue to reiterate, if you have somebody who lives in Marion, Alabama, where the internet is slow, or they might live out in a Midwest area, they can go to a lift zone where there is free access to Wi-Fi and technology and training. We also have organizations that are willing to step up, as well as professionals. And can we give Tatiana a round of applause? Because she is talking about these issues all the time on TV. I know that for a fact. But my takeaway is reach in. Don't reach down. Reach across. Reach to the side. Reach up. And bring folks with us so that we can create the next AI that is done for us, by us, with us, and about us. Because otherwise, we will be on the fringe trying to figure out why we're not included.
Alacia.
I would say have an open mind. When you get a certain age, I'm older than I look, we become afraid of the change and newness. But one of the things I say often is my parents taught me ABCs, and I had to teach them how to use a computer. We all need to build from each other. So have an open mind, and it's okay to not know, but don't stay in the place of ignorance, because this is where society is moving from. My husband has one of those self-driving cars. I won't say the name. It was before whatever. But I didn't trust it before. I was like, you're crazy. I know you go to sleep when you drive because I wake you up, right? But then now I'm like, I trust that better than I trust your driving, right? Because he swerves, and I'm not trying to hear it. But I had to have an open mind. I had to have an open mind. And so what I'm saying to you is have an open mind. Do not choose to stay ignorant. Ignorance is, we're destroyed for the lack of knowledge. And so you don't want to stay ignorant. You want to make sure you have an open mind so that you can learn the next. Yes, you know your ABCs. Yes, you know how to use the computer. And some of us real good, we can use that smartphone. But it's the next level.
Can I just answer?
We just have a couple minutes left, so I did want to open the floor to everybody. If you had any last thoughts or pieces of advice for our audience, let's just go to Junior first. Let's go.
I will say this. I have 2 points. One is that we need to be talking about regulating AI and big tech. And so it is very unfair to be putting this on every one of you as consumers, as us as citizens. The real answer is that we need to be looking at how do we, at the scale, make sure that these are not black box systems where you put in information, you have no clue where it goes and who it owns it. It is important that we actually go ahead and talk about what it means to regulate these things in ways that serve our communities and serve folks that there are so many systems that are being used to weaponize, to surveil us. We should be deeply paranoid and angry and then demand our policymakers do something about it. And then secondarily, I think I would say my other point of advice is be worthy of the trust people give you. And that means that the reality is in a world where everything can be deep faked, where you don't know who said what and what is actually real, it is deeply important that you then say, you know what, I'm going to do the diligence. When I say something, it is true. I've fact checked it. I've gone to do the work of vetting it. Do not just post or reshare something because it's funny or because it's interesting. It is deeply dangerous, and we're realizing that this is going to have impact on our elections. It's going to have impact on the people that we believe in and we care about. And so it is really important that we do not let these systems weaponize us in the process of it being viral. And so be someone that people can come to and know that the answers are worthy of the trust they give you. Thank you.
Well, I'm not sure which. Okay, I was going to say one last thing just on what my dear sister said. So she said her husband has a self-driving car. She wasn't going to name the name. And we all know that we use AI products, and sometimes we don't name the name. But this is what I would just put out as the last nugget. Be like Better Housekeeping. You share which product works best for us. And buy black. And if there ain't nobody to buy black from, you better put down a scroll of questions. Does this meet my values, my goals in life, and my supporting shareholders that do not believe in my community or take from them? So I just had to say that because that's something for me that's so important, that we don't get swirled up into this system, but feel like we don't have any control because the AI is taking over. If you think you wrote that sentence quite well, when you're actually using a Microsoft a word processing and they want to suggest you to write it different, don't do it because you thought you wrote it well. It's okay. You still have agency over how you actually use AI products.
I want to thank our esteemed panel. I want to thank you, audience, for joining us today. There are some important nuggets, pieces of information here. So Ron Busby Jr., thank you so much.
Pleasure.
Ron Busby Sr., thank you so much. Nicole Turner-Lee, thank you as well. Alacia Black Hackett, thank you as well. And I'm Tatiana Anderson, and Comcast, thank you too.